California's American Indian peoples. There are many different peoples that lived in California and throughout North America during the time of Europeans first setting foot in the Americas. But the region that is now California was home to a very, very large number of Native Americans. It was, in fact, home to more Native Americans than any other particular region in the United States at the time, because there were a lot of natural resources that could be used here. There were people who fished along the coastlines and in the rivers, hunted wild game, and gathered food as well. The main source of food was actually wild oak trees, though, which produced acorns. And the majority of the people actually lived along the base of the Sierras in California. And they would harvest these acorns, grind them into acorn flour, and then the native people had a way of leaching the acidity out of these acorns, out of the acorn flour, and making a flour that you could use to make breads and things like that. This also led to them having really amazing basket weaving skills and storing baskets to store these acorns and to store the breads that were made and things like that as well. They were generally polytheistic cultures, meaning that they worshipped multiple gods. So these are some important facts about California's American Indian peoples. California became a Mexican province in 1822 after Mexico won its independence from Spain. So just as the British colonies that became the United States won their independence from Britain, Mexico won its independence, and that was a Spanish colony. After they won their independence, they ended up abolishing the mission system for economic reasons as well as sort of socio-political reasons. Mexico sent a series of governors to California, including Manuel Victoria, and he ruled with a very, very strong hand. The people who lived in California, the Californians or the Californios, basically resented Mexican rule because they already were sort of starting to develop a sense of identity as Californians. And they sort of felt that Mexico was too far removed from them and was exerting influence over them and wasn't really interested in their concerns and didn't understand their lives and wasn't really able to represent them. So in order to keep control of this region, Mexico basically sent governors who would sort of oversee the region, and one of the more well-known ones, Manuel Victoria, was very militant and very strong in how he dealt with people. There were groups of rebels who rebelled against him and the other governors, and one of the more famous leaders of these rebel groups was Pio Pico, who sort of basically said, you can't dictate our affairs from outside. We should have our own country, our own state that's separate from Mexico, and we should govern ourselves. So they were fighting to bring that about. California's Constitution and government. Let's talk about some key principles. First of all, California's Constitution was similar in many ways to the U.S. Constitution, including separation of power. It has three branches, a legislative, executive, and judicial branch. The legislative branch is made up of a bicameral legislature, a state Congress, a state legislature. You have a governor who basically is the executive. The lieutenant governor who presides over the state senate, just like the vice president of the United States presides over the U.S. Senate. You have a state Supreme Court. So all of these same branches with similar checks and balances. One difference in the California government is the type of veto power that the governor has. He has what's called line item veto. The President of the United States has to veto an entire bill or sign an entire bill, and that leads to what we call riders, people attaching things to the bill that they know he does want to sign that maybe he doesn't want to sign. So they know he does want to sign this bill overall, but not this one particular part. They attach it as a rider, and he has to sign that part as well if he wants to sign the rest of it. In California, the executive, the governor, has a stronger veto power. He has line item veto power, which allows him to strike out the parts that he doesn't want and then sign the rest of the bill into law. A few other differences in California's government versus the federal system. During the progressive era in the early 1900s, they tried to give more direct governmental power to the citizens of California. They passed the ideas of initiative, referendum, and recall. Initiative is a system by which a citizen of California can get signatures on a petition and have a law brought up to a vote. They also can challenge a law that may be on the ballot, get enough signatures, and have that law brought up to a vote to be removed from the ballot through the referendum process. And they can also remove an elected official if they don't support that official for whatever reason. Very famously, there was a recall of Governor Gray Davis using this direct power by the people of California. Got enough people to sign a petition and then brought it to a vote and voted the governor out of office. These are all things that at the federal level, we're dependent on our representatives to do. A person cannot introduce a law at the federal level or remove a person from office. Other representatives have to do those things. But in California, the people can do those things directly because of these progressive era reforms. So these reforms are kind of the key difference, as well as some things like the line item veto power. But overall, if you're trying to think about the government of the state of California, really just think about all the aspects that you know about the U.S. government, and most of them are the same because they really pattern the California government on the U.S. government. Patterns of immigration to California and the effects. There are a number of important waves of immigration to California that you want to know about for the exam. The first one is the gold rush. In 1847, they discovered gold, and between 1847 and 1860, there was a massive growth in the population of California as people moved from all over the country and all over the world to try to strike it rich in the gold rush. The population grew from 15,000 people to 380,000 people during this gold rush period. Later, about 20 years later, we see the California land boom of the 1880s. The homestead system basically tried to attract people to California to start certain kinds of businesses, in particular agricultural businesses and things like that. So they offered basically land to people if they would come and start certain types of businesses on the land. They offered them these homesteads. So a lot of people came to take advantage of this free or low-cost land that would be given them if they would start these businesses. So that led to the California land boom of the 1880s. Then we had the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, there was a dust bowl in a lot of the traditional places that grew crops, places like Oklahoma and Kansas and Arkansas and places like that. So the people who worked in agriculture in those regions moved out to California in many cases to try to find jobs in the agricultural industry in California. California was not suffering from that climatic issue or that weather issue, and was still producing agriculturally, so there were more jobs. But there weren't really enough jobs to go around in many cases, and often the agricultural workers who moved here during the Great Depression to California suffered a lot of exploitation and abuse and often couldn't find work. And there have been a lot of famous works written about the plight of those people, things like Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. But nonetheless, that was a big boom in California's population as people moved during the Great Depression. And there were other types of jobs and industries that people were moving to California for as well during that time. Also, the 1965 reforms to the U.S. immigration laws. There was the Immigration Reform Act, or revisions to the McCarran-Walters Act. Lots of things that basically repealed a lot of the nativist laws that were kind of racist laws that were excluding people from immigrating to the United States, in particular excluding Asian people from immigrating to the United States, things like the Chinese Exclusion Act. And with these repeals and changes in the immigration policy, you saw a lot more people being able to immigrate to the United States in general, and many of these people chose to make their homes California because of all the opportunities in California economically. So you saw, in particular, a lot of huge Asian population centers booming in California in the late 60s and early 70s due to the changes in immigration law. So these are not the only sources of immigration to California, but these are some very important ones that are good to know for the exam. California's major economic activities. So for the exam, it's good to know about the basic sort of historical and geographic locations of California's major industries. California's economy is a vast, huge economy, bigger than most countries in the world. So what are the big economic sectors that are driving this economy? First of all, mining. And these are in no particular order in terms of their total economic contribution, but these are all important sectors. Mining, initially California was a big place for gold mining, but there's all sorts of different ores, silver, all sorts of different things that is mined in California, building materials and things like that, things that are precious ores that are mined. So mining continues to be an important industry in California. Agriculture. California is basically the major agriculture producer for most of the United States. The Central Valley of California is where the majority of that agricultural production is being done, but there are agricultural centers in other parts of the state as well. But the agriculture in California, that industry is a vast one, and that agriculture supplies lots and lots of states in the United States, as well as shipping agricultural products overseas. The entertainment industry is located in the Los Angeles area in Southern California. Sometimes on the exam, they'll ask about the reasons why they chose the Southern California or Los Angeles area as the seat of the entertainment industry. There were lots of reasons, but the most important one is climate. They wanted to not lose shooting days because of rain, so they wanted to choose a place where it very rarely rained, and Southern California was a great choice, a very dry environment. It also was helpful that there was such a variety of terrain, mountains, beaches, deserts, and at the time, westerns were very popular. John Ford and people like that making westerns, so it was a great region to shoot westerns in as well. But the primary reason was really the climate. Recreation. California is a major recreational destination with theme parks like SeaWorld, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, with national parks or state parks that you can come to. Places like Yosemite are very popular tourist destinations, as well as cities that are popular tourist destinations like San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, etc. So a major recreational destination that people travel to from all over the United States and all over the world. The aerospace industry. Aerospace was producing rockets, planes, defense products, all sorts of things in California. Especially in the 50s and 60s, it was a thriving, booming industry. A lot of that industry was located in the Orange County area of Southern California with companies like Boeing, Lockheed, Hughes, Autonetics, McDonnell Douglas. All of these were aerospace firms that made California their homes. But with the defense spending cutbacks in the mid-70s, it actually struck a very big blow to this particular economic sector. And many of these companies continue to have operations in California, but not nearly at the scale that they had in most cases prior to those defense spending cutbacks in the 70s. Also, the electronics industry. California produces silicon microchips in the Silicon Valley area south of San Francisco. So a major producer of microchips and other technology products in California. And then international trade. There's a number of important ports, including San Diego and San Francisco. But in terms of the busiest trade route, the port of Los Angeles, which is the combined port, really, the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, is the trade route between there and Asia is the single busiest trade route in the world. So the shipping of goods into the United States, most of them come through that port and then are distributed by truck or other shipping methods to the rest of the United States. So international trade, California is huge as a place where shipping comes into and out of. California's water delivery system is very important to the fact that there's such a thriving, large metropolitan area in Southern California, which is essentially a desert, and couldn't really support a metropolitan area without water being brought in from an outside source. Some of the water needs are met with reservoirs that source local water from the water table, and canals that divert water from different rivers. But the biggest source for water to Southern California is the California Aqueduct, which basically brings water to the populous regions in the south from the northern part of the state where there's a lot more water. So it brings water from the north down to the south to feed that metropolis that exists in what is essentially a desert.